So you can take a couple minutes to complete your DQ for the day. I'm going to be collecting notebooks next week. So you want to get those up to date. If you haven't already realized, you need to like add a text box in on your notebook sheet in order for you to be able to write on it. That's been a question some people have had. So remember, you want to put a picture with your notebooks, a relevant picture. If you're done with your DQ notebook, I would like to watch a video with you. So this is going to take us 6 minutes. We're going to talk about the hierarchy of life this week. It's our last topic for chapter 1, unit 1, however you want to call it. So this video is going to be like a preview of the whole thing. And then, okay, so we're going to watch this video together. It gives us an overview of the entire hierarchy of living things. Then today we're going to just look at the smallest of the levels, which is at the chemical layer. And then Wednesday we'll look at the middle, which is like the organism system. And then Friday we'll look at the ecology, the ecosystems, the broadest of them. Okay, so you're going to have a worksheet to do in a breakout room after we watch the 6-minute video. This is Mr. Bozeman. He is highly useful in the virtual world.
Hi, it's Mr. Anderson. Today I'm going to talk about the hierarchy of life. Biology is organized from the very small to the very large, which would be the biosphere. And so each of these different levels is called a system. And a system is separated from its surroundings using a boundary. And so example, non-biological example, if we have a city, that would be a system. Inside that we have a school. Inside that we have a classroom. And so it's kind of like these Russian dolls with the larger ones enveloping the small ones. And so as we move through these hierarchy of life, one term that I want you to keep in the back of your head is emergent properties. In other words, with each level, as we get to a level, there's going to be a property or properties that show up that weren't there on the level before. And so let me give you an example. This right here is a soldier. This would be a termite protecting the mound. But each of these termites inside are an individual system of their own. They're working together in a system of a colony, and they're actually farming a little fungus that grows within the termite mound. If we even look at a larger scale, this right here is a termite cathedral. Now, a termite cathedral is so big that it faces a major problem. Carbon dioxide is going to build up on the inside of these as they're all doing cellular respiration. And so they could all asphyxiate if there wasn't some way to remove that. And so they're designed so that as the wind blows, there's ventilation and we can actually sweep that carbon dioxide away and new oxygen in its place. Now you might think, wow, smart termite, how did they figure that out? Well, basically think of it as 80 different termite cathedrals that are a little bit smaller. And in some of those, all the termites die. Well, their genes would die with them. And those that have any kind of a ventilation are going to be able to survive. And so we get a emergent property showing up. So here it is, your hierarchy of life from atom all the way to biosphere. And as you get good at biology, you'll just simply memorize these. Let's start with the first one, which is not really biology at all. This is an atom. This is an important atom called carbon because it has 4 valence electrons, and so it's very good at bonding. If we go to the next level, that would be the molecule. And so here's carbon again, but it's bonded to 2 oxygen molecules, and so now it's carbon dioxide. What would be an emergent property? Well, that would be the idea that it's more stable. It's actually formed and it's sharing these electrons, and so it's now bonded, and so that would be something that we find in molecules. Go to the next level, we have what are called macromolecules or large molecules. The 4 different types, remember, are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. An emergent property in them is that they're built of monomers, so repeating blocks, and they eventually show what's called polymerization. Next, if we get to the level of the organelle. These are going to be the tiny organs inside cells. This right here would be the plasma membrane. It's made up of macromolecules. It's made up of this phosphate group on the top, and it gives it this emergent property, the ability to separate the outside and the inside of a cell. Speaking of cells, this would be a red blood cell. A red blood cell is going to have that plasma membrane inside it, but it's also going to have the hemoglobin protein that I just showed just a second ago. And so now its emergent property is that it can move around and it can actually grab oxygen and then move that to different parts in the body. Next, we go to the level of the tissue. A tissue is made up of a bunch of cells that are working together. This is actually a muscle cell. You can see that there are some striations in it. And we look down here, we can see these intercalated elongated discs. And so we know that this is cardiac muscle. And so it does a specific function, which is contract to beat your heart, but it also can receive nerve signals. And so that nervous signal can kind of wash it across it. Okay, when you have a bunch of tissues that are organized and working together, we have what's called an organ. And this one is called the heart. Now, this is going to have all 4 different types of tissues inside it. It's going to have muscle tissue, nervous tissue, connective tissue. It's going to have epithelial tissue on the inside. And so all those tissues are working together with a single purpose. That heart is sitting inside what's called an organ system. And so this would be the circulatory system. Here we have our red blood cell, but we also have the heart and all of these arteries and veins, and they're working together to move that red blood cell around your body. Next, we have an organism. This is called an elk. An elk is made up of a number of organ systems that are working together. Organisms are organized into a population. So this would be all of the elk that are living in one area at a time. Once we get a number of different organisms living in one area at one time, now we have all these intraspecies interactions between, bull elk and cow elk. And so basically, this would be an emergent property we find at the level of a population. Next, we have all of these different populations interacting together, and so this would be a community. It's all biotic at this point, so they're all living things, but we're going to have, this looks like predation right here. This would be predation. We're going to have competition, we're going to have parasitism. And so we have all these interactions between different populations at the level of a community. Next, we go to the level of the ecosystem. I happen to live right here, right on the border of one of the greatest ecosystems in the world, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. What have we added when we get to the level of an ecosystem? Now we're adding abiotic materials. So we're adding water, we're adding chemistry, we're adding light, and all of these things go together to form an ecosystem. Interesting, where do we put this boundary? Well, basically they discovered the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. The way they figured out the boundaries, they looked at wherever grizzly bears are found, and we said this is going to be that ecosystem. Now we go to the level of a biome. A biome is going to be ecosystems that have similar climates. So they're going to have the same temperature and they're going to have the same precipitation throughout the year. And so tropical rainforest or desert, or this would be a northwestern coniferous forest, or the tundra or the taiga. And so these are all types of biomes, and the biomes together form what's called the biosphere. And the biosphere on our planet is wherever we find life. And that goes from deep in the ocean to high in the atmosphere. And that is the hierarchy of life. So I hope that's helpful.
Mr. Bozeman is somebody we use quite often. So we're going to get into a breakout room, and I want to show you how to split your screen so that you can see both the group of people that you're talking with. And remember, you want to unmute yourself, and please, if at all possible, show your beautiful face. It's easier to talk to somebody. You feel like you are with somebody if you actually see them. So thank you, all of you who have joined me today. The blank screens, you feel really alone and it's awkward to talk to. So especially in the smaller groups, if you could turn your cameras on, that would be super. There's 2 different ways you can split your screen. That way you have your Zoom in one screen and your work in the other screen. I do not have a Chromebook, but this is what a friend of mine had sent me. If you push the Alt button and the bracket button, now the description, she just says the Alt and the bracket, and she only shows the left-hand bracket, but she's squared both brackets. So I'm not positive. If it doesn't work with just the one, then you're going to want to do it with both, and you would do that at the same time. So if you're on a Chromebook, you can split your screen that way. If you are on a laptop or a desktop, you can just grab a tab and you can pull your tab out. See, now I have 2 windows. Now to be able to have your Zoom in it, you just want to minimize your screen. So, I mean, not like minimize, but you want to change the size of your screen. So then this takes up half of my screen and my Zoom will take up the other half of my screen. Okay. So I think that will make it a little bit easier to make it through our Zooms, where you can do work and talk all at the same time. Okay, so we're moving on to this worksheet. It's in your Google Classroom. So if you open up this worksheet, Hierarchy of Living Things, this is based on the video we just watched. Here's the link. So if you forget something, you can you know, go back there. At minute 2, I'll give you, a lot of people were looking for this. At minute 2, he talks about his systems, okay? So this is our social time. We want to have cameras and I'm going to stop sharing. We want to have cameras and voices on. So everybody's going to open up that worksheet. You're all going to do it on your own. You can, I mean, together, but you're all going to type it because you're going to turn that in, and then split your screen so that you can talk and write at the same time. Okay, so I got my window of people open, and I got my notebook open. So with that, at minute 2, you made your way through the systems from atoms all the way to organ systems or ecosystems, biosphere. That's what he ended with. The one that may have caused problems was the emergent properties. The emergent properties are like characteristics that are available at one level, like at the systemic level, for example, that weren't there at the level before. So something that a system can do that a tissue cannot do by itself. So like circulatory system can pump blood, whereas the tissue itself cannot move the blood. So that would be an example. Okay. So did you have any questions on that worksheet? I know some of you may need to finish it later in Flex. Okay, so this time you're going to open up from your Google World. You have this worksheet that is a guided note sheet. So rather than me just talking to you and you guys going la, 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 I thought this might have you a little bit more actively engaged. So if you have this in one window, I'll be going through a PowerPoint in your Zoom window. So then you can follow along with. So this is about just that lowest level of organization, right? We're going to talk about the chemistry portion. Next week, we're going to move out of this first unit and we're going to go into chemistry. So as we get talking about macromolecules, that is going to be much more relevant. Okay, so we should be able to name 6 elements. This really gets us ready for next week's macromolecules that are found in biological molecules, and that's carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. We are not, I meant to delete this. I deleted some of the stuff. We're not going to be talking about the chemical bonding, so just ignore that. The key vocabulary, you've seen most of this already. Electrons, protons, and neutrons, those are smaller than an atom. So Bozeman did not talk about, Mr. Anderson did not talk about that level. So this is what he was showing you. You had atoms like a hydrogen atom that went together to make molecules, macromolecules like carbohydrates. Then those went together to make, this skips ahead, right? So you had organelles, cells like a blood cell, tissues like muscle tissue, organs like a heart, organ systems like the circulatory system, and then the organism, which would be like a human. And he kept going beyond that. We'll talk about that Friday. So today we're going to stick down here just in the atoms and macromolecules. Okay, so this is an atom. Have you guys studied atoms at all in middle school? Drawn them? I know physical science people last year did. Okay, so you have the nucleus of the atom, where you find protons, which are positive, neutrons that are negative. They are not negative, they are neutral, thus the name neutron. Okay, so these are found inside of the nucleus and they make up basically the weight of the atom. Out here, you might refer to these as orbitals, electron clouds, or energy levels. So in photosynthesis, we'll talk about the energy levels and electrons jumping from one energy level to another. So electrons are found circling or orbiting the nucleus. So you want to know that the nucleus contains the protons and the neutrons. Protons are positive and neutrons are negative. The electrons are outside. They have a negative charge. So the protons and the electrons have a magnetic attraction. So that is what's going to hold the atom together. So the positive is attracted to the negative, so it pulls the outside to the inside. So the force which operates between the opposing charges holds the atom together. These are called subatomic particles. Atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. And hydrogen is an exception because hydrogen does not have neutrons, but every other atom does. And the number of protons it has determines what type of element you're talking about or what type of atom it is. So hydrogen has one atom. Any atom with one proton is a hydrogen atom. Any atom with 6 protons is a carbon atom. So the number of protons determines or labels, characterizes the type of atom it is. So the atomic number is the number of protons. When we look at a periodic table, at the top left is where we find the atomic number or the number of protons. So like I said, any atom with 6 protons is a carbon atom. Usually your protons and your electrons equal, so it also has 6 electrons. The mass, if you remember, I said was in the nucleus, so the mass is protons plus neutrons. So together they equal 12. So there's 6 neutrons as well. So looking at this set, can you guess how many protons are in calcium, nitrogen, aluminum, sodium, and fluorine? Knowing that the atomic number here, top left, is its number of protons, you should have identified the same number, 20, 7, 13, 11, and 9. Okay, any questions so far? So subatomic particles make up atoms. Atoms of all one kind make up an element. So all the hydrogen atoms belong to an element. All the carbon atoms belong to a category of the carbon element. 94 occur in nature. I think our textbooks, if you were working out of our textbooks, it would say 92. So 2 more have been found in the recent years. The rest don't occur in nature. They occur because human made them, so they're synthetic. So this is your periodic table. There's a trend that they increase 1 proton as they move across the scale. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the atomic number is increasing by 1 as you move through the scale or the periodic table. The 6 we will be concerned with this year are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which are found in lipids, proteins, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. And these are the things that make up all living things. Add nitrogen. Nitrogen is found also in nucleic acids and proteins. Add sulfur, and you're talking about proteins only. Add phosphorus, and not sulfur, you're talking about nucleic acids. So these are the elements we'll need to work with next week when we start talking about those macromolecules. So moving on through the hierarchy, if I have those elements and I bond them in one way or another, I make compounds. They can bond by sharing electrons or losing and giving up their electrons. So ultimately, it's the number of electrons that determine the type of bond they have. Compounds are any 2 elements or atoms bonded together. So hydrogen and oxygen, hydrogen and carbon, hydrogen and hydrogen, any of those can be a compound. If you're referring to any 2 of the same type bonded together, you're talking about a molecule. So we have 2 hydrogens here, that's a molecule. Here you have both 2 hydrogens, so it's a molecule, but any 2 atoms bonded together is a compound. So here they have to be different atoms. Here they can be the same atom. These are covalent bonds, and that's going to be another qualifier, but we're not getting into the bonding component, so no worries. So because these are all of the same element bonded together, these would be classified as molecules. These have different atoms bonded together, so they are both compounds and molecules. So just a little nitpicky detail there. So atoms are made up of subatomic particles. They go together as a collective, are considered elements. Elements go together to make compounds or molecules. We're going to talk about molecules, not so much about the compounds. So we can just talk about macromolecules. Any questions over that? I may have gone too fast for you, in which case I don't remember if I put the PowerPoint in yet or not, but if not, I'll put the PowerPoint in and you can go back through it during flex time and get caught up. So that was one of the questions that was coming up. Okay. So today, what I want you to do during flex time, anything you haven't turned in yet. I'm trying to get caught up on all your grades and I want to be done with week 1. I want to be done with week 2. Okay, so turn those in. You're going to have some new pages for your notebook, and I shared these with you in the Google Classroom under today's flex time. So you're going to find, first of all of our DQs that we've done in case you're missing a DQ. So just make sure you have each of these DQs. And that's not you can edit it if you make a copy of it. So if you're missing this page, just copy this page and put it in your notebook, okay? You also have vocabulary, okay? So there's a vocabulary for today, Wednesday, and Friday. So copy these pages and paste them into your notebook. So today's vocabulary has to do with that lecture we just did. Wednesday's vocabulary. Tomorrow you're doing bodies. So you're going to do that one. Friday's vocabulary has to do with ecology. Okay, so you're going to add these to your notebook. If you know how to do like hyperlinks, you can hyperlink the page to your title. All right, so you have making up assignments that you're missing, updating your notebook with your DQs in today's vocab, and then we have the human body CK12. And I know those don't take you very long. I wanted to show you something cool I discovered in the CK12. You may have already figured it out. I just figured it out. So it turns out if I find something that I want to remember, like I have 12 body systems, I can highlight this with whatever color I want and it automatically makes notes for me down here. It keeps track of the notes that I've taken. So that's super cool that I can annotate that. Not only can I highlight and annotate that way, but I can also say they must be able to work together and I can make a note. So like this reminds me of the hierarchy. Whatever. Okay, so that's kind of cool that you can keep track of those things as you read. There's 2 videos along the way. Of course, you watch those. And then, you have your practice at the bottom. Make sure you hit turn in score. Some of you have I've been like, I don't see your score. And you're like, I did it. So you have to click turn in score. And then finally, there's a short worksheet where I took the questions from the bottom and I just created a worksheet with it. And so that's linked to the page too. Tomorrow would be wonderful. Thursday at the latest, okay? And it's hard to go through literally 750 assignments a week and have to backtrack and find something from previous days. So the sooner you get it in, the more on top of it I can be, okay? So so that's our list of things we need to do. You can always use your agenda as a checklist, right? Each day we say what we need to accomplish. So if you're not sure, go through that.